Woman insults soldier on plane, but the news next day leaves her in tears. The Houston airport terminal hummed with the usual sounds: rolling suitcases, hurried footsteps, and constant announcements. Helen Martinez, dressed impeccably in her Chanel suit and Christian Louboutin heels, checked her Rolex for the third time in 5 minutes. The flight to Boston was already delayed by 30 minutes, and her patience was wearing thin. When boarding finally began, Helen's first-class ticket should have promised a peaceful journey. However, as she settled into her window seat, she noticed a young man in military fatigues approaching her row. Her perfectly manicured fingers tightened on her leather handbag. "Excuse me, ma'am," the soldier said politely. "I believe I'm in 2B." Helen barely stopped herself from rolling her eyes. Another soldier, probably expecting special recognition just for wearing the uniform. She'd seen it plenty of times before. Priority boarding, endless "thank you for your service" comments, and hero worship that followed anyone in military attire. The soldier, with a name tag reading Walker S., carefully stored his worn duffel bag in the overhead compartment before settling into his seat. Helen noticed how he moved stiffly, clearly favoring his left side. "I suppose you got some kind of military discount for the seat," she couldn't help but remark, her tone dripping with disdain. Sam Walker turned slightly toward her, his expression neutral.
"No, ma'am."
"Full fare, actually." Helen raised a skeptical brow. "Usually, your kind expects everything handed to them on a silver platter, special treatment everywhere you go." A slight tension appeared in Sam's jaw, but his voice remained steady. "I assure you, ma'am, I'm not looking for any special treatment." "Oh, please," Helen scoffed, leaning into her frustration. "I see it all the time. People falling over themselves to thank you for your service, offering discounts and privileges, as if wearing a uniform automatically makes you a hero." Nearby passengers shot Helen disapproving glances, but she ignored them. The soldier, meanwhile, pulled out a worn photograph from his breast pocket, staring at it with such intensity that it only irritated her further. "What's that?" Helen sneered. "Your propaganda photo op with some poor foreign children?" Sam's fingers tightened slightly around the photo, but his voice remained calm.
"No, ma'am."
"This is my daughter, Sarah. She's 6. "Oh, how convenient." Helen rolled her eyes. "Playing the family man card now? Let me guess, you're on some noble mission to save the world while leaving her behind." A flight attendant's announcement interrupted the tension as the plane prepared for takeoff. Sam carefully tucked the photo back into his pocket while Helen made a show of checking her emails one last time before enabling airplane mode. "Actually," Sam said quietly once they were airborne, "I'm heading to Boston Children's Hospital. Sarah has a rare form of leukemia." Helen sighed exaggeratedly. "Of course she does. And let me guess, you're hoping someone overhears and starts a GoFundMe for you. Isn't that how it works these days? Military families playing the sympathy card." A woman across the aisle audibly gasped at Helen's callousness, but Sam's expression didn't change. He reached for the in-flight magazine, his hands trembling slightly. Whether from emotion or anger, Helen couldn't tell. "The military's healthcare system should cover that anyway," she continued, her voice cutting. "More special treatment." Sam finally looked at her, his voice barely above a whisper. "Ma'am, I understand you have strong feelings about the military, but my daughter's condition is real. The treatment she needs is experimental, and that's why we're going to Boston." Helen noticed a faint scar along his neck that disappeared beneath his collar. Probably some training accident, she thought dismissively. She had read enough about how much money was wasted on military exercises. When the flight attendant came by with a drink cart, she offered Sam a complimentary drink, saying warmly, "Thank you for your service." "See?" Helen gestured triumphantly. "Special treatment, just like I said." "No, thank you," Sam replied, his tone polite. "Just water, please, and I'll pay for it." The 4-hour flight continued in tense silence. Helen buried herself in work on her laptop, occasionally glancing at Sam. She noticed him frequently checking his phone whenever possible, his expression growing more concerned each time. During a bout of turbulence, the plane jerked, and Helen caught sight of severe scarring on Sam's wrist when his sleeve rode up. "Combat injury?" she asked, her voice more sarcastic than curious. "IED in Kandahar," he replied simply. "2 years ago. Lost 3 members of my unit that day." "Well, that's what happens when you sign up to play war," Helen retorted, though her tone carried slightly less venom than before. Sam turned to her fully, his eyes heavy with emotion. "Ma'am, I don't know what's made you hate the military so much, but none of us are playing." When they landed at Boston Logan Airport, Helen deliberately lingered to avoid walking next to Sam through the terminal. At baggage claim, she overheard him on the phone.
His voice was strained.
"Yes, I'm here." "No, the last treatment didn't work. Please, just keep her comfortable until I get there." "Yes, I know visiting hours are almost over, but I'm her father." Helen shook her head, convinced it was all an act. She collected her designer suitcase and left for the taxi stand, pushing the encounter from her mind. Later, in her luxurious hotel room at the Four Seasons, Helen sipped wine while scrolling through her social media. A shared news article from a Boston station caught her eye, and her glass nearly slipped from her hands. The headline read, "Local Hero. Decorated Soldier Fights New Battle for Daughter's Life." On the screen was Sam's face, but not how she'd expected. He was in a hospital room, holding a frail little girl with no hair. Despite the tubes and monitors, her smile was radiant. Helen's hands trembled as she read on. When she had secured her position as senior sales representative, it was congratulatory, praising her for her exceptional negotiation skills and sharp business acumen. She had once taken pride in the cold, calculated efficiency that defined her career. But now, as she stared at the email, she felt none of that old satisfaction. Her priorities had shifted in ways she couldn't have imagined. The night of the gala arrived, and the ballroom was a spectacle to behold. The space had been transformed into a glittering wonderland, complete with cascading floral arrangements, shimmering lights, and a stage framed by a giant archway that resembled the entrance to an enchanted castle. True to Helen's request, Disney princesses roamed the room, bringing smiles to children and adults alike. Belle, in her iconic yellow gown, was the star of the evening. Sam arrived with Sarah in his arms, her frail body dressed in a tiny gold ball gown that mirrored Belle's. The sight of them brought the entire room to its feet in applause. Tears shimmered in Sam's eyes as he saw the lengths to which people had gone for his daughter. Sarah, beaming, waved to everyone, her voice sweet and clear as she exclaimed, "Daddy, I really am a princess." Helen stood in the back, watching the scene unfold with a lump in her throat. For the first time in years, she wasn't calculating her next move or analyzing a situation for personal gain. She was simply present, basking in the pure joy she had helped create. Throughout the evening, speeches were given, donations were made, and stories of courage and hope were shared. Helen avoided the spotlight, content to let Sam and Sarah take center stage. But as the night drew to a close, Sam sought her out. He approached her cautiously, his uniform crisp and his expression unreadable. "Ms. Martinez," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I know this was you. The room for Sarah, this gala, it's all because of you. I don't know how to thank you." Helen shook her head, tears threatening to spill. "You don't need to thank me, Sergeant Walker. I'm the one who owes you an apology. I was so wrong about everything. About you, about what you represent. I judged you unfairly, and I'm deeply sorry." Sam studied her for a moment, then extended his hand. "We all make mistakes. What matters is how we move forward. And what you've done here, it means the world to my daughter and me." Helen took his hand, gripping it tightly. "It's the least I could do." As the event concluded, the final tally of donations was announced. With the matching contribution from Helen's company, they had exceeded their goal by over $250,000. The room erupted in applause, and for the first time in her life, Helen felt something she couldn't quantify or measure: true fulfillment. The next morning, as she prepared to leave Boston, Helen made one last stop at the hospital. She peeked into Sarah's room, where the little girl was sleeping peacefully under her princess canopy, Sam dozing in the chair beside her. Helen placed a small envelope on the table by the door. Inside was a handwritten note. Dear Sarah, you are the bravest princess I've ever met. Keep smiling, keep fighting, and know that you have an army of people cheering you on. With love, your fairy godmother, Helen. Walking away, Helen felt lighter than she had in years. The woman who had once scoffed at the notion of heroes now understood what true heroism looked like. And for the first time, she realized she had the power to be one too.